You see the NCAA, with the vote of its institutions, doing things like allowing for immediate transfer and eligibility. We know, Matt, that when a student transfers from school to school, their chances of graduating with a bachelor's degree are cut in half.
Yeah.
And yet the NCAA, Division III, my peers, voted that in 95% to 5%, and I was in the 5% voting no. That's not a Division III thing to do. We got that wrong. We put our students last.
Welcome back to the Significant Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Rogers. We have a very special two-part episode this week. I open the show with a clip that captures exactly why I see this week's guest as a true higher education superhero, because of his conviction to helping families make college affordable and ensuring students have the opportunity to graduate without being buried under a mountain of debt. Today's guest is Dr. John Comerford, president of Otterbein University in Westerville, Ohio. I was blessed to both attend college and then spend nearly 20 years working at the NCAA Division III and Division II levels and the NAI level. That experience fuels my mission to make sure every parent and student understands just how many outstanding choices exist beyond their local state schools. As you'll hear, I asked President Comerford some difficult, big picture questions, and he never backed down. He never gave an easy out answer. He spoke from the heart, and I believe that's the same way he lives his life and leads his community. If you're a parent or a high school educator, you're in for a treat. Dr. Comerford is about to challenge and blow up some of the things you may assume you know about higher education and tuition costs, things that too often discourage everyday families from even considering private colleges. I learned a ton from this conversation, and I know you will too. It's not only educational, but it was a lot of fun. For more information about me, along with my coaching and recruiting books, classes, and resources, and speaking opportunities, please visit CoachMattRogers.com. And if you enjoy this conversation, please hit that subscribe button. I can't tell you enough. It's free. It costs you nothing. But it does help me keep bringing you transformational conversations with people who share the truths about college, sports, and education. Without further ado, here's part one of my conversation with Dr. John Comerford. Dr. Comerford, so excited to have you on the podcast. Thanks for being on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be invited, especially by way of Rich Dunsworth and Jim Trohog. Good people.
Really good people, and they've spoken highly of you. I want to jump in, if you don't mind. I want to kind of quote you a little bit from what I've read. You've said that Otterbein's leadership is meant to be different, special, and worthy of emulation. I love that. I think every college and university should be striving for emulation from their peers. What does that look like in practice when you're leading a campus community?
So the primary thing I'm talking about when I say something like that is the rot in the heart of American higher education is elitism. We all want 30 ACT kids from suburban high schools and to be in the top 10 ranking of whatever stupid magazine comes along. This leads us to do things that are bad for students, bad for institutions, and bad for society. And so if you looked me up, Matt, you saw I was president of Blackburn College in Illinois last, a work college unabashedly serving a majority Pell-eligible student population, giving kids a chance that wouldn't have a chance anywhere else. And Otterbein is a heart of the curve. We serve rich kids, we serve poor kids, we serve local kids, we serve international kids, and I shouldn't call them kids, but we have to, as charities, open the door wider to higher ed and not measure ourselves by how many doors we close.
Right. How do we do that when we have to keep the doors open and feed the kids and pay the water bill? How do we do that the right way so those families that don't have $25,000 a year saved, how do we give them that opportunity to go to an Otterbein and not just they have to settle for the local community college?
Yeah. So this is actually, it's not just a values thing. It's not just it's the right thing to do thing. It is, for a place like Otterbein, a business imperative. It works in our business model. And here's the secret sauce. And every president in the country should totally copy this. If you take the Pell Grant, if you take, at least in Ohio here, the Ohio College Opportunity Grant, but every state has some need-based grant that matches with the Pell, right?
Sure.
If you get some SGOG dollars and things like that in there, I'm getting for a Pell-eligible zero AFC student $14,000 a year in revenue. My typical net revenue per student is like 15 or 16. It's not meaningfully different.
Right.
And so I can put a deserving low-income student into a seat that, given the demographics, would probably otherwise be empty, get real revenue for it, and do the right thing. This isn't just to give it away for free because it's the right thing to do. It's been the key to the growth that we've had.
All right. So that helps your lower class families, the families that are making under 60,000 a year, typically 50,000 a year. What do we do? What do we do for those middle class families that are busting their tail? Mom and dad are both working. They're making 120, 130,000 a year with two parents. And they're looking at a price tag of 20 grand a year and going, we just can't do it. Where do we find that extra $1,200 a month to send our kid to a good college? How do we help that family?
Yeah, so the donut hole, and I don't have a magic thing there. I talk about high-income students. They're fine.
Yeah.
Pell-eligible students, we found a way to make it work for Pell-eligible students. It's the students between there that does get difficult. There's no way around it. I would implore all of us to think about our pricing models. We have a high tuition, high discount model like most other schools have. Even now, public universities are having these high discount rates. And so the sticker price tends to scare these families away. If you looked at Otterbein sticker price, you're going to find $34,000 a year. And those families especially going to go, And so we have seen the market grow for public institutions because their sticker price appears more affordable.
Right.
The reality is if we can at least get them to look, then we're often as affordable, if not more affordable than the public. It's about doing a better job, Matt, of helping students find their match. And too often we don't do a good job of articulating the finances, articulating the distinctiveness of the institution. Why is Otterbein different than Ohio State University? And there's 1,000 reasons why. Ohio State's great, so are we, but we're different.
Yeah.
And helping them find that match.
Well, I know how hard you're working at it. And I love that about you. And I love that messaging because I've talked to parents, I can't tell you how many presidents I've talked to about that model that you're discussing is we had to keep up with the Joneses. I always hear, everybody in our conference is moving to 50 to 70,000 a year. We had to move up there. Or otherwise we don't look like we're the same value proposition. But parents don't know that. Parents don't know that you're increasing what you're giving with the raise in tuition prices. So how do we explain that to my dad, who was a barber for 60 years, making, $5-6 a head of hair back in the 70s and 80s when I was going to school? How do we explain to him when he sees a $60,000 price tag that they still should apply, still go through the financial aid process, not to think that it's not attainable?
So what we found, and this is not perfect, is signaling it before we get FAFSA data back from the federal government. Too often, we hope they apply. If they apply, well, then we wait until the spring when we get ICER's data from the feds to be able to package financial aid, right? And so there's this long period in which you look super unaffordable and out of reach until suddenly the financial aid comes in late in the spring. And so for a Pell-eligible student, we call it the Opportunity Scholarship. And we just tell them, if you're Pell-eligible, we've got you for tuition. Full tuition covered, no loans. Simple, clear, right away if you're eligible or not. And so, boom. And you can go into a lower income school district or go into a charitable partner and just say that, and they light up. And so it's clear. You don't have to wait and, figure out 17 things on a FAFSA formula. For the middle class students, what we've done, and we just had a really good incoming class this fall. We're really happy. And part of that was we have always packaged students twice. We package merit the moment they're admitted, right? Because we know GPA, we know ACT, package merit right away. Then we wait for ICER's data to package need. Well, a year ago, remember the FAFSA debacle where the ICER's data was delayed and the FAFSA was delayed forever and whatever. And that was a real crisis across the country. And we took that moment to look at our data, and 95% of our students were getting repackaged with additional need aid after the ICERs. And so why not just move that aid up front?
Yeah.
And give them a better look with that first package. And we think that's one of the things we did that led to a bigger class coming in, is just not having to wait for months for the FAFSA data. If you can communicate that clearly up front, give it a name like the Opportunity Scholarship, at least that's had some effect here.
I love it. I'm going to transition into athletics a little bit here with you, because I think it plays such a big role in a small campus in terms of you paying the bills, you being able to market, you've been able to get the Otterbein name out there, not to mention filling beds and all those things that we want athletics to do for us.
Yeah.
The NCAA has made it very clear for many, many years, 50, 60, 70 years, whatever it's been, that we can't give athletic scholarships. We can't give anything based on your athleticism to a kid coming into your school, right?
Not in D3, yeah.
Not in D3. But we have institutions at the D3 level that are finding a way to make it cheaper with the same price tag. Is there a way to do that with your coaches without breaking the rules? Is there a way to say, you know what, we're giving this much money to that kid with a 3.8 GPA, 1200 SAT. We're going to give these kids this amount of money, and we're going to make sure this is affordable for them. And we're also going to do that same amount we're going to make sure our coaches know they're going after that type of kid. This is the number we want you to go after, coaches. That doesn't mean you can't get other kids in the door, but if you want to get that bottom line to here, this is the kid you have to go over. Is that being preached from top down to your coaches so they understand they've got to go after that certain individual, at least maybe 50%, 60% of their roster? Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. And I would say, at least here, part of that is happening. So when we launched the Opportunity Scholarship for the Pell eligible students, that we can now cover full tuition with no loans. That's a game-changing financial aid package.
Right.
I think our coaches in many sports had stopped recruiting, say, in urban school districts because they thought these kids can't afford Otterbein, so I'm not going to go and waste their time and waste my time. So we went to those coaches and said, hey, those students can now afford Otterbein. If they're Pell Grant eligible, we got them. Full tuition. And you're not going to get, even your 30 ACT kid from the suburban district isn't getting full tuition.
Right.
And so you ought to now go into those schools and build those pathways. And that's led to more diversity and all sorts of things like that. We have not, though, Matt, gone to coaches and said, hey, here's our sweet spot of revenue students, right? So as long as they're admissible, as long as they can find a way to afford it, given whatever package they get based on their need and their merit, we've not directioned them within that. But we have seen a number of sports open up new recruiting territories based on the Opportunity Scholarship.
I love that.
As a separate thing, Matt, can I just go ahead and be blunt and say this feels like it's going to be moot pretty soon because NIL is going to blow up D3. I mean, there are already schools in D3 that are packaging NIL. And so how long are we going to pretend that we're not packaging athletic scholarships? I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. I think that's corrupting, and I don't want to be anything like D1, where athletics is wagging the dog. I don't want any part of that in D3. But given the legality of NIL, we're seeing, not at Otterbein yet, but at other schools, booster groups get together and go give, let's just call them what they are, athletic scholarships. They're just called NILs. And so what does D3 mean now?
It's so frustrating for me because I was a D3 athlete. I was a D3 head coach. I was a D3 athletic director. I'm now a consultant for small colleges across the country. And I loved my experience. You know, would I have liked to have gone cheaper? Would I have loved if somebody give me some money? But I at some point, don't we have to articulate and define NIL for what it is? Because if a company's not giving me money to use me in a commercial or put me on, on their banner, or, I'm wearing their shoes, what is NIL? I don't
Yeah.
understand it. So that's my problem with it. And we have to be able to let these kids make a living, make more money if they can do it. But how many shooting guards at the Division III level are going to get money for having a Coke bottle in their hand?
Well, not for having a Coke bottle in their hand, but that's not a literal requirement, right? I
Yeah.
understand the Ohio State quarterback can probably help you sell Coke or sell cars. I get
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Sure, okay. You're right. No D3 athlete or very few D3 athletes will ever actually help the company sell anything. But you don't have to do that part, right? You can just
Right.
put together an NIL deal and
That's right.
give a student money. And that's where, so what does D3 mean? One of the things I've always said, because I've been D3 pretty much my whole career at Westminster College, Blackburn College, Otterbein, like I've been around D3 for 25 years. And I loved that I would always say, and still do for now, this is college athletics as it was meant to be.
Yes.
It's pure amateurism. It's students who play because they love their sport and they love their school and they love their teammates. We're not paying them to play.
Right.
And that resonates with people. This is what it's supposed to be. But NIL cuts directly against that. And it's here.
Is there a way to enforce this where a D3 simply can't put any of that money, any of that NIL money in their financial aid?
Well, it's not in financial aid. My understanding, and Matt, I'm going to put the caveat, I'm no lawyer or expert on this stuff, but my understanding is it has to be an outside group. Like it's designed to be like a company, your local Ford dealer, whatever. But instead, the outside group is turning into alumni booster clubs.
Right.
That are not controlled by the university. The university cannot directly put that money into financial aid. But you could have a booster group, and I think this is happening in D3 now, go to that really great point guard and say, hey, I know the college financial aid thing when you have a $20,000 bill, and we have a $10,000 NIL deal for you. So why don't you go to Otterbein and play point guard? So it's not technically financial aid, it's NIL, and it's not from the university, it's from the boosters. But the line is so fuzzy that it's meaningless. And I think we're just professionalizing D3.
All right. You talked about Westminster and Blackburn. I was the head coach and athletic director at Maryville for many years. I think we had some overlap. So I coached against those schools, and I can't imagine for the life of me there ever being anything like that at any of those schools. Yeah. Where would that have come from at a Blackburn or a Maryville?
Well, here's my worry, Matt, is this is going to cannibalize what limited athletic fundraising we have. And so instead of a booster giving to help us pay for our new bleachers in the arena, they're going to give to the NIL and say, well, I helped out Otterbein because I gave to the NIL booster group. And so there's always more money to be raised. Don't get me wrong. But at some point for an individual donor, it's a zero-sum game. And I gave my 10 grand for that NIL booster club as opposed to my 10 grand for the new bleachers. And so I do think we're competing with ourselves at the end of the day.
I agree. So I'm going to go back to my initial question that I butchered and I didn't ask it very well. But let's say that NIL money comes to you. Okay. And the idea is we're going to give you $1 million and we want that $1 million to be divvied up half non-athletes, half athletes. Does the NCAA get in your way if it's going to both?
I think so long if the university is distributing the aid and athletics is a criteria to the award, we are not allowed to do it. So yes, I do think that gets in the way.
What if it's not? Because at the end of the day, what does an audit look like? It's about, is there consistency between non-athletes and athletes? Am I wrong in that?
That's what the audit is. But if we had a scholarship fund that had, so for example, I think it was Blackburn, maybe. Maybe we did this at Otterbein. I forget which school it was, but we had some scholarship endowments from the 70s or something like that, where it said, this is for a student from whatever county who's a student athlete, whatever. We had to change that language to take student athlete out,
right,
and put in student leadership. And being a student athlete is part of student leadership, and so they would still qualify, but you couldn't have any criteria to do with athletics, is my understanding.
All right. So this gets back to the heart of my point.
All right.
Can we convince these boosters that we can't promise you it's going to go to athletics? We can't even say it's ever going to go to an athlete. But why not have the mindset from your admissions and financial aid? We're going to work together and create some balance there and help the coaches make sure the kids they're bringing in are getting it. Can we do it on the down low, or is that still icky?
Oh, that's icky, I think. So what I want is a donor. If Matt and I can tell you've got $1 million check, you're ready to write it, and you can write to Otterbein, because after this conversation, you're all in, right? And you're going to say, I want it to be for student financial aid. Now, that $1 million or whatever it spins out, we can use for athletes and non-athletes alike.
Right.
But I would feel with the current Division III rules, ill at ease about using athletic participation as any criteria at all. I wouldn't even want to look at, well, we want it to make 30% of our students are athletes. Let's make at least 30% of the money should go to athletes. I don't think you can use that at all, given the current structure. Which is another reason that you, Matt, as a donor who wants to support athletics, might be tempted to put that money into an NIL booster group, because then it is going to athletics.
Exactly.
And athletes, not athletics, but athletes.
Yeah. I'm trying to come at this, and I'm not a lawyer, and I'll never pretend to be a lawyer. I'm trying to come at this in a way where we can do this and get the NIL out of the way and keep D3 the way it is. I'm trying. That's my whole focus with this. I don't want to lose that possibility. So can we go this route? Can we just tell everybody that's a part of recruiting athletes to say, this is what we're looking for? These are the things we want. Tell your baseball coach, but tell your biology professor, tell your whoever's in charge of your band. Can we say, we're looking for this, and we want to make sure this sum of money or this lump of money goes to those type of kids?
Sure.
And athlete never needs to be a part of the conversation, but we're trying to find balance across all of those extracurriculars and your academic programs.
Yeah, and if I'm following you, I think that's what we do now. And so
Okay.
we publish our merit scholarships and our need based on Pell are known things. And so a coach would know if they find a great point guard who's also a 4.0 GPA and a 32 ACT, they're getting a presidential scholarship and a full ride. They know that. And so they can, I'm sure, use that as they're thinking about this. But it's, those are also the students we're all chasing. It's the race to merit.
Well, it's at the end of the day, and this is the challenge that the NCAA continues to face and has faced for years. It comes down to enforcement. It doesn't matter what rule we put in place or what we all agree to or what we accept if we can't enforce it.
Yeah, but so I think Division III is in this land between. And we have not, I just joined I haven't done anything yet, but the President's Advisory Group for D3, and, Troja is chairing the whole caboodle and doing the whole thing. So I'm just now getting into this. But it strikes me NIL is directly at odds with this, we don't do athletics financial aid, athletic scholarship bit. And that's eventually going to come to a head. Then, as I am very resistant to the idea of giving up on D3 with the philosophy we have of true amateurism,
Right.
you see the NCAA, with the vote of its institutions, doing things like allowing for immediate transfer and eligibility. We know, Matt, that when a student transfers from school to school, their chances of graduating with a bachelor's degree are cut in half.
Yeah.
And yet the NCAA, Division III, my peers, voted that in 95% to 5%, and I was in the 5% voting no. That's not a Division III thing to do. We got that wrong. We put our students last. That was athletics before student success, and it was wrong. And so we've got to get our hearts right about what Division III is even supposed to be financially, and in terms of our goal in Division III is to get these student athletes amazing athletic and leadership experiences and get them graduated. And allowing them to transfer all over the country and play for 4 schools in 4 years is bad for those students. We shouldn't have done it.
Forget graduation, just learning how to be an adult, learning how to live in the world.
Yeah. And this is all residue from D1, where athletics at this point, as far as I can tell, has nothing to do with the institution. It's just a side enterprise in a professional sports league. And in a professional sports league, your athletes can move around because they're making money and doing whatever. They're not there to go to school in a lot of these sports. And so we ought to be as far away from that in D3 as we can get. And yet, well, they're doing it in D1. That we should do that too. And athletic directors love this idea. Presidents need to do a better job of pushing back.
I agree. I'm 100% behind you. I'm talking to coaches and athletic directors and presidents every day, and I want to understand it better. I want to understand, because right now it just feels like quicksand. It doesn't feel like there's any structure. It doesn't feel like there's any direction. I'm talking to Division I head coaches that have to bring in a class, and they still don't know how much scholarship they're going to have for next year.
Yeah. And so, Matt, let's get in the way out machine for a second.
Yeah.
And, they're going to kick me off this NCAA committee if anyone, if the central office listens to this, but that's okay. One of the things that many of us are talking about is the eventual demise of the NCAA.
Right.
That when the power conferences leave D1 and set up their own March Madness tournament, the revenue stream of the NCAA falls apart, and probably the NCAA falls apart. And in D1, you'll have the power conferences doing their things, and all the non-power conference D2 and D3 schools will be left out on their own. And so then we'll end up with a much more conference-oriented, probably limited opportunity for national championships, but conferences will drive it. And then maybe in those smaller settings, you can get this right a little more easily, like, and not that we're all trying to be Ivy League schools, but like the Ivy League has sort of eschewed a lot of the D1 practices. Yeah. Because in their conference, they've decided they have a different value set. I would hope the conference that we're in, the OAC, would do that. But that's, at the moment, we're beholden to NCAA changes.
So you can see a light at the end of this tunnel, even if the NCAA is to fall apart. And we can create a good model, and maybe we can then go back to my original question to you. We can have other conferences emulate, and maybe eventually we get back to a national type of thing, but maybe we're going to be better if it's conference focused.
Yeah, I'm not rooting for the demise of the NCAA, but I also don't think it's catastrophic for schools like us. I mean, D3 is at this point so huge, Matt, that an opportunity at a national tournament, much less a national championship, is myopic.
Yeah.
And so, okay, you don't have an NCAA championship structure anymore. We have conference drives things, and you want to be conference champion. Okay, that's sort of how we operate anyway. It's very rare that, we're making these national tournaments anyway. Although we just did have a national champion last year, so I shouldn't say that. When women's wrestling, we have a national champion. But it's rare.
Yeah, it is. It's hard. It's the most schools in any division level. That's what people don't understand. Where it's almost 450 schools in most sports, and Division I doesn't have that. Division I, II doesn't come close to that. So it's when you win something that big, it's very cool. I didn't even have NIL on my list of questions for you, so I don't want to take up this entire podcast talking about it. But let's leave this conversation with a little hope as we move on to other things. Yeah. We just heard John Calipari and Rick Pitino, two of the biggest names in college basketball, stand in front of cameras yesterday in the last week and say, we are not recruiting high school kids. Just flat out say, it doesn't make any sense for us when we have the portal. So we talked about the NIL. We talked about this madness above at the Division I level. What hope is there for that family that's raised a great kid? They've worked hard, good grades, great student athlete, and they want to keep playing, but they're not sure what all this noise means to them. What's the hope for them?
Well, the hope for them is that D3 state clings to its values, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't blame, if you as an 18-year-old have a reasonable prospect of going pro in your sport and making real money and chasing that dream, go for it. Go to Ohio State and play football and hope you get drafted and make millions of dollars. No one's going to blame you for that. Right. And that makes the Ohio State football team and other power conferences football, basketball teams minor leagues for the pros, if we're being honest about what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen them becoming pros themselves as they're you can get paid millions of dollars as a college student now in
Right.
NIL deal. So they're pros themselves. But the reality is no one's ever going to come to Otterbein with a reasonable expectation of turning pro in their sport. And if anyone out there is listening thinking, I'm going to be an NFL player, then you probably don't want to play football at Otterbein. You're going to have great experience, and we'd love to have you, but this is not a pipeline to the NFL, and we're not designed to be. And so for those who just want to play because they love it, if we can maintain what has made D3 different, and I think better than D1 and D2, then we're going to be okay. This NIL thing starts to blur that line, and it depends on whether our schools and our boosters begin to really put real money into NIL and mess that all up. And that's not entirely within our control.
Yeah. Money causes all of our problems, it seems like these days. Okay, you talked about early on about the great programs you have to help those financial needy families get into your school. But that still comes down to you have to make the grade to get that money, to earn that Pell Grant at your school, to earn that institutional money that you're offering to make that affordable. How do we get these parents to understand how important that is so they don't figure it out at 17? Wow, we could go to Otterbein tuition free and we're only making $40,000 a year. How do we get parents to understand at the 6 and 7 year olds that there has to be homework every night. There has to be collaboration every night. There has to be something that you're showing your kid, this is the value here. You can get a great education, have a great start to your life if we focus on your grades early. How do we do that so those parents don't get there and go, oh, we could have had this? We could have gone to college for nothing?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things that come to mind, Matt. Again, I don't pretend to have the solutions to all these. You're bringing up some big societal issues, and if I had the answers, I'd be running for something. So first, it's on us as a higher education sector to do a better job of educating about access and affordability issues. One, we need schools to walk that walk, and not enough schools walk that walk. They talk the talk, but ultimately all their aid goes to 30 ACTs who come from wealthy families.
That's right.
In suburban high school. So that's empty words at that point if you're talking about access and affordability, and that's what you're doing. So we have to walk the walk. Then we have to spread the word. And this is part of what we've created with the high sticker price models. We're scaring these families who are making 40 grand a year. No one's ever been to college. They don't get that's not a real number. And so we need to do a better job. This is where at Otterbein, this is a local solution and a national solution. We deliberately partner where we know those families and those students are. So we're in with the Columbus City schools, and we're in the programs that are helping first-generation students get to college. And we're in the affordable housing nonprofits, working with them to spread the word that your kids can go to Otterbein, as opposed to thinking private schools would be impossible for you. So there's local things, but I would think none of this matters unless schools get their heart right about actually investing in students who deserve a chance. Yeah. And not just 30 ACT. I'm not knocking 30 ACT students. I just sent a 30 ACT student off to college. But they're good, and they deserve their aid too. But if that's what your yardstick is for success, well, you're in a shrinking pool of potential applicants and potential students, and it's not going to work.
All right, let's take the big society issue and bring it home for you.
Yeah.
How important is it that you have a relationship with the superintendent and principals in your community to say, I want my people in your school, because you want my people in your school talking to your families. Once a year, you should have somebody from Otterbein or whatever that local college is in here talking to them about, hey, if you keep your grades here, this is what it can become. This is what you can do. So when you see a $60,000 a year price tag, that's not going to happen. That's not your reality. If you decide you want to control it now, if you want to do the work now, is that a way that we can take that big picture and shrink it a little bit? If our presidents have those relationships with the superintendents in the school districts?
Yeah, I think that helps, certainly. So I know most all the superintendents in Central Ohio and a number beyond. And certainly this is always my leading thing is we're about access and affordability. Your students that are worried about affording college, we want to be, and the superintendents always get it and respond well. When you get to the school level and you're talking to the principal and the guidance counselor, where the rubber hits the road in the high school, in the middle school, this sort of stuff. The problem becomes we are seen as biased actors. We're there to recruit for Otterbein. And so if they're going to let us in and have a special assembly, well, they need to let Capital University in, and Ohio Dominican, and Ohio Wesleyan, and Ohio State, and Ohio University. And so they tend to see us all, which I don't blame them for. We're all the same, and no one gets special time. And so even if we showed up with, well, no, we have a special pitch about why you can really afford college, even if you're Pell eligible, even if you have no money for it, there's still ways to do it. They're going to hear that as we're going to go in there and make a special Otterbein pitch. And I don't blame them for that, but it's a hard nut to crack.
Yeah. It seems that we're just constantly chasing our tail.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes we just need to see the forest for the trees a little bit. That I think most presidents are trying to do what you're doing. They're trying to make it affordable. They're trying to give first generation kids and second generation kids more opportunities. We just have so much ignorance out there. And that's my concern. I want more competency. I want more teachers understanding. I've got to be talking about this in my math class. I got to be talking about this in my history class. In PE, I got to be talking about, hey, you're a great athlete, but if you're not doing well in history and math and English and science, being a great athlete's not going to mean much for you after you leave here.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also an issue of social promotion and grade inflation in K through 12 to the point where we can't tell what GPAs mean out of school sometimes anymore. And so there's a variety of things wrapped into this that make this more difficult. I'll tell you, Matt, one of the most disappointing results I've ever gotten in higher ed is when I came here about 8 years ago. Our VP for enrollment and I, shared this philosophy and this vision for access and affordability. And we said, well, why don't we, get rid of the $34,000 sticker price and just price it at 16, 17, whatever the actual net generally is, and just be transparent. And it's not a great analogy. It'd be the Saturn of higher ed, where there's no negotiation. It is what Saturn's a bad example because they close. We don't want to close, but you know what I mean. Yes. People don't trust higher ed. Let's be the trustworthy school was the idea. And so before we did that, we hired a marketing company to come do a research study of, what would be the impact, right? Before we do this. Well, the answer is what families want, expect, are motivated by is a really high sticker price and a really high scholarship. I'm not kidding. We asked families, would you be more likely to attend a school that costs $17,000 and gives you no scholarships, or costs $30,000 and gives you $15,000? We test all these different levels. We would be better off at Otterbein with a $100,000 sticker price, and everyone gets an $85,000 scholarship. That's what they want. Right. And so we have this ill-informed consumer base that isn't prepared with their understanding of what all this even means. And we get students, I'm sorry, I'm ranting now, Matt, but we get students here all the time. We're like $33,000, $34,000. And we'll have a student that we gave a $15,000 scholarship to, and then they went up the road to a school that cost $50,000, and they got a $25,000 scholarship. And they'll come to us and say, well, they gave us $25,000. And we say, well, do the math. They want $5,000, $10,000 more from you than we do. But there's this perceived value that is infuriating because that $50,000 is a made up number. It might as well be $100,000.
And here comes the coach in me and saying, I don't want that kid that can't do basic addition and subtraction. Go to that other.
It's mom and dad too, though. Mom and dad. Yeah. Johnny got $25,000 to go to whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. It's nonsense. It's nonsense, but they think it's real.
All right. Talk to me about what you want out of your coaches. And this can be very vague as well. What kind of leaders are you looking for? Because it was funny, when I talked to Jim said every coach that we bring into interview, I haven't put him on a whiteboard and said, explain to me your philosophy, explain to me who you are. What is going to be defining for for your program. And I love that. I've interviewed for 100 coaching jobs. No one's ever done that to me. What is your expectations for your coaches in terms of who they are and how they represent the university and what their role is?
Yeah. Well, let's just start by saying Troha is going to do a better job than everybody else to begin with. There's no whiteboard in here or whatever. God bless him, though.
Well,
So
it's everybody has the different. Yeah.
what I talk to coaches about, and this is sort of coaches, I think, tend to be practical people, right?
Yeah.
You can talk up in the clouds all you want. They're thinking about on the field, on the court, what do I got to do? How do I run this play? Like, they're just practical people, and I love that about it. And so, it's rather than talking up in the clouds, I tend to coaches about recruit, retain, and win.
Yeah.
Okay. And these things feed off of each other. It's a virtuous cycle, or it's a cycle that takes you down into nowhere, right?
Right.
And so if you can recruit, well, then hopefully you're getting a roster that has some talent on it. And then D3, without a scholarships, and let's pretend there's no NIL, that has always been, you need some volume on your roster to have some talent,
Yes.
right? I mean, that's just the way D3 works. And so if you can recruit some students in, then you're going to start to have some success. You're going to build a positive culture and then retain those students, not just on your team and in your program, but at the institution. And these things feed on each other. And when I say win, I always tell coaches, I don't have to have a conference championship every year, but we have to be competitive.
Yeah.
No one wants to play for the 0-30 team. That's terrible.
Right.
It's not a good experience.
That's
It's
right.
not fun. It's not uplifting. It's not a positive thing. And so you have to be 500 at least to be competitive. Like, you're not getting blown out. You're in the mix is what matters, right? Occasionally you run for a conference championship. That's great. And so these things can feed on each other. Or if you have a losing program, and we've had those too, where you can't recruit to a losing program, students leave a losing program, the program gets to be more and more losing because you can't recruit and retain. You've got to get those three working in sync together, moving up, not down.
I love it. It seems so simple, right?
It just sounds so easy, right? I mean, why don't we all do?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, where I mentor coaches is I go, you don't understand your university. You're recruiting against yourself. You don't know how your financial aid works. You don't know how your admissions works. You don't know the strength of your academic programs. I talk to coaches that win national championships and they go, yeah, we're really good at physical therapy. Half my roster is physical therapists. We've got a great nursing program. Half of my roster is, and it's smart. They know what they're going after. They're not reaching for things that are only going to hurt them in the long run. So I love the mentality. And I think the more we keep it simple, the better it is. Thank you for doing this. I know you've got a meeting and I want to talk recruiting with you, but thank you for having this big picture conversation. I know how hard it is to talk about because we just don't have answers, but I love the fact that you're looking at it from a perspective as whoever wants to come here, we're going to give them a great education. We're going to be open-armed. We're going to make sure that if this is what they choose, we're going to make sure they're not leaving here with $100,000 in debt. And they've got an opportunity to go have a career when they leave here, right?
That's right. That's right. And Matt, thanks for leading this conversation.
Sir.
Thanks, Matt.
That brings us to the end of part one of my conversation with Dr. John Comerford, president of Otterbein University. What stood out today is his willingness to speak plainly about the cost of college and the barriers that keep families from even considering options that might actually be their best fit. He doesn't sugarcoat it, and that honesty is refreshing. But we're just getting started. In part two, Dr. Comerford comes back and we're going to shift gears and he's going to share his perspective on college recruiting, what he expects from his coaches, what he believes families should understand about the process, and how leadership at the top can shape an entire athletic department's culture. If you're a student athlete, a parent, or a coach, you won't want to miss it. For more tools and resources to help guide your own college journey, visit CoachMattRogers.com. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It's free. It costs you nothing, and it makes sure you never miss conversations like this one. Until next time, stay focused, stay humble, and keep chasing significance.